All right, India's financial roadmap for 2026 is out, and it is packed with some really big ambitions. So, over the next few minutes, we're going to break down what this budget means for the economy, for the country's future, and, for your wallet. Let's dive in.
So here's our game plan. First up, we're going to look at the big vision that's driving this whole thing. Then, we'll get into the specifics for the economy, for people, and for our own finances. And we'll wrap it all up with a look at the country's overall economic health.
The budget really kicks off with this powerful message from the finance minister. It's basically a promise to turn those big dreams into real, tangible results. This whole idea of aspiration into achievement is pretty much the thread that ties together every single policy we're about to talk about.
So what's the why behind all these massive numbers and policies? Well, the government has basically built its entire strategy around a single guiding principle, which it's broken down into 3 core missions.
Right at the heart of this budget is the principle of kartavya, which translates to duty, and it's best to think of it less like a dry set of policies and more like 3 fundamental responsibilities the government has set for itself to really push the nation forward.
And here they are, plain and simple. Number 1, put the pedal to the metal on economic growth. 2, help people actually achieve their own goals and aspirations. And 3, make sure everyone, and I mean everyone, has access to the resources and opportunities they need. These 3 duties are literally the foundation for everything else.
Okay, so how does that vision actually turn into real-world projects and policies? Let's get into the what of the budget, the actual, concrete plan for powering up the economy.
The government's using this cool metaphor, the Reform Express, to make one thing really clear. All those big structural changes that started back in 2025, they are not stopping. The message is that the push for things like simpler regulations and making it easier to do business is going to continue full steam ahead.
Now, a huge piece of this economic puzzle is manufacturing. The budget specifically calls out 7 key areas. You can see them here. Everything from biopharma to semiconductors. And they're being positioned as the engines for India's future growth and, importantly, its self-reliance.
And they're putting serious money behind this. It kicks off with a massive 10,000 crore rupees for biopharmaceuticals. The goal here isn't just economic. It's about turning India into a global hub for medicine, which is also a huge deal for national health security.
We see a really similar story in electronics. That sector has been so successful that investment has already blown past the original targets. So what's the government doing? They're doubling down, pouring in 40,000 crore rupees to build on that momentum and grab an even bigger piece of the global market.
And then, you see this number, a staggering 12.2 lakh crores just for public infrastructure. We're talking roads, ports, railways, the works. This isn't just about spending money. It's about literally building the physical foundation for the entire economy to grow on top of.
It's actually really important to get what this kind of spending, called capital expenditure, is all about. It's different from day-to-day expenses. This is an investment in long-term assets that are designed to keep paying dividends for the country for decades to come.
But look, a modern economy is about way more than just concrete and steel. The budget also makes a huge investment in what's often called India's greatest asset, its people, its human capital.
And this is really the critical question the budget is trying to answer, right? How on earth do you prepare millions and millions of young people for the kinds of jobs that will exist in the future? Skilling this next generation is a massive priority, and the budget lays out a pretty clear plan.
And the approach here is really broad, as you can see from this table. It covers everything from training 100,000 new healthcare workers all the way to creating creator labs for the gaming and animation industries. The strategy is obvious. Invest in the skills needed for the high-growth sectors of tomorrow.
All right, let's talk about the part that hits home for all of us, taxes and personal finance. The budget's rolling out some major changes here, all aimed at making things simpler and giving a bit of relief.
So, the biggest news, by far, is a complete overhaul of the old tax law. A brand new, simplified Income Tax Act is coming into effect, and the whole point is to make doing your taxes way less of a headache for regular folks like you and me.
Now, if you travel overseas, you're going to want to pay attention to this. Before, the tax collected at source, or TCS, on tour packages was this confusing mess of different rates, sometimes 5%, sometimes 20%. Well, that's all being replaced with one single flat rate of just 2%. Much, much simpler.
And that's not all. There are a bunch of other tweaks designed to make life easier.
from making interest on accident claims tax-free to giving all of us a little more time to revise our tax returns if we need to. Okay, so let's zoom out from our own bank accounts for a minute and look at what all these numbers mean for the country's economic health. How is the nation's balance sheet looking?
One of the most important health indicators for any economy is something called the fiscal deficit. To put it simply, it's the gap between what the government earns and what it spends. Think of it like a household budget. You want that gap to be as small as possible. Managing this number is a huge priority.
And you can see from this chart, the government is staying on its path of fiscal consolidation, which is just a fancy way of saying they're trying to shrink that gap between earning and spending. The deficit is projected to tick down just a little bit, which signals a real focus on careful financial management.
And what's really crucial here is that this financial discipline isn't coming at the expense of the states. The partnership between the central government and the states is holding steady, with 41% of central taxes being shared. And that's a key pillar of India's whole federal structure.
So when you put it all together, this budget lays out a really clear roadmap with a sharp focus on vision, action, and impact. But it leaves us with the ultimate question. Is this the right engine to power India to its goal of becoming a developed nation by 2047? The plan is on the table, but the journey? Well, that's just getting started.